Huh? Welcome back to my channel. I'm trying to make sure I'm close enough to see you. Hi. It might have been a while. This video, I'd be surprised if anyone actually looked at, just because people aren't interested in Twilight anymore. But I had an interesting conversation with my friend and I want to talk about this. So hi, hello, how are you? We are going to revisit Twilight. When Twilight came out, I was definitely a nerd for it. I read all the books. I remember staying up well into like 3-4 a.m. when I had school to get through these books. And my God, did I love every second of it. I would completely devour her books within like 2 days too. I remember having this system where I would have to beg and plead with my mother to buy the books at Borders. Do y'all remember Borders? Oh my God. We would go to Borders and I would get the book. I would only get one though, because at the time I could only afford one. But I would use like gift cards that my family would give me for Borders. We'd go to Borders and I would get the next Twilight book. When I started reading them, all 4 books were out. It was just a matter of me getting through them. But as soon as I read one, I would lend it to my friend who would read it, who would lend it to a third friend, and then it would get back to me. But that was our system, was I would buy the book and then we would rotate it between the 3 of us. At this time, I actually had 3 copies of the book because I did not have a copy of the first book. The first book I borrowed from a different friend, and she has all 4 of the books, but she has the Twilight book. I didn't have the Twilight. I just had New Moon, Eclipse, and Breaking Dawn. Anyway, I was super into Twilight. Since then, I have reread the books only a couple times. I recently reread the books this summer. So I was meaning to talk about the books a lot earlier. But I just now got to it. So my memory of the books might be hazy a little bit on like the details. I wanted to revisit Twilight because I know it's like a thing that everybody shits on Twilight and is like, it's so bad, it's so terrible. I would like to raise my finger up about that. I think, and this is going to sound crazy, I think Twilight definitely had its flaws. But I don't think it deserved the hate that it got. I think, yes, the movies were absolutely garbage. But the books, I think the books were a different realm. And since I have a booktube channel, I'm going to talk about the books. I will mention it in conjunction with the movies here and there, but this is mostly about the books. And let's always never forget the books are better than the movies, but the movies were garbage. So, there is very little about the plot I'm probably going to talk about. I mostly want to talk about the characters. So I'm going to go down the list of talking about like 3 or 4 characters, really. Most of the side characters are okay. I want to talk about Bella. I want to talk about Edward. I want to talk about Jacob. And I want to talk about their child, Renesmee. Let's start off with Bella. So, Bella is our main character in Twilight. She is our heroine. Bella gets a lot of hate. And I think it's undeserved. People have said Bella is a bland character. Bella is a boring character. Bella doesn't have any traits to her. Bella is blah, 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 blah. Bella is not a bland character. Hear me out. Wait. Listen. Stay with me. All right? Listen to my madness. I swear. So, Twilight. When was Twilight written? 2005. So, let's do a blast to the past. 2005, right? Let's talk about the YA genre back in 2005, which is drastically different than how it is now. 2005 was a time where, in most YA romance books, a lot of authors were writing books that were very specific. They were writing romance books where the main character was usually almost always female, And she was almost always quiet and shy and timid and introverted and reserved. And oh my God, this quiet, shy girl that the guy has to notice, and then they fall in love and da 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 da. Like, that was kind of the hitter for how most of the characters were. The main girl was always quiet and shy and reserved. There was always emphasis on her being the good girl, her being she didn't curse, she didn't drink or go to parties, or she didn't like do drugs, and she stayed home and read books, and it was kind of that sort of emphasis. Oh, and she was always a virgin, by the way. There's the emphasis on virginity. But that was kind of the aspect of what the main heroine was almost always like. The reason behind this was because a lot of authors and publishing companies assumed that most people that read this book were like that. So they wrote their main characters like this because they thought it would be more relatable. Hence, every YA romance book, not all of them, but majority of them, featured heroines that had these traits. All the way up until maybe like 2010, 2012, we didn't really see a change until more around like 2016, more recently, has the heroines' character traits, in my opinion, changed. Therefore, Bella exudes all of these traits, right? I'm gonna raise my finger on that one. We'll come back to that point in a second. Put that in the back of your head. Bella has these traits. What I think happened is that people were tired of seeing these character traits, and therefore translated over into, oh, I've seen this character type a million times, so therefore it's boring. Therefore she's bland. Therefore it's nothing new. Therefore, Bella became a boring, bland character. Bella is not necessarily a bland or boring character. It's just a character we've seen so many times over and over and over and over and over and over and over in YA romance that people got sick of it. And that put Bella into this box of she sucks. She doesn't actually suck that much. She has her flaws, but she's not the boring, bland character. She does have character traits. Now, did Stephenie Meyer do a great job of this? Not necessarily. And I hate to say it because I think Stephenie Meyer has her strengths as a writer in some places and not in others. Just like myself, I write in my free time. I definitely know where my strengths are as a writer and where some of my weaknesses are. My weaknesses, I'm great at describing things. I'm great at dialogue. I'm great at giving you, everything that you need to know on a need to know basis. I'm not good at describing what characters look like. I'm not good at giving you descriptions of appearances, right? And I've been working on that myself, but it's just an example. I think Stephenie Meyer is good at character introspection, going on and on and on about what a character thinks and how they feel and their personality, and really giving you everything that they are. Not enough of the other side though. Like, she's good at doing that for Edward. Not good at that with any other character. Right? Okay, so that's Bella. YA nowadays, in comparison to how it used to be, from what I've seen, is way different than how YA was for me growing up. And that's not to say all YA, but the really super duper popular ones seem to be like ones that have a lot of abuse. Like emotional abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, psychological abuse. Like, the aesthetic has changed more so from shy, quiet girl and the hot guy goes after her, pursues her, to more of, oh my God, this bad boy. Right? Because that's essentially what it is in so many words. It's like, there's this bad boy that the girl has to have, and he's so intense and sexy and whatever. Woo, child. The issue with that is that I've literally seen read lines, heard people read lines, heard in reviews. I've heard lines where like the main character is literally afraid of what the love interest will do to them. Like, they're afraid of their reactions, or they're like, oh no, if I talk about this he's gonna get mad or he's gonna get angry. Girl, that's textbook abuse. What are you saying to me? So I don't know what's going on in YA nowadays, but good luck out there, y'all. Protect your eyeballs. Because it's wild. But I did defend Bella on that. I will say that Bella, and this is more so from a perspective of me reading. First of all, I read Twilight, but I also read, what was it called? I can't remember. The leaked chapters or whatever, where Stephanie Meyer was gonna rewrite Twilight but from Edward's perspective, but then the chapters got leaked and she put it up on her website anyway, but none of her fans read it because she was like, she didn't want anyone to read it, but she put it up anyway. Okay, so I read it. I read like the first, it's like only 5 chapters I think, but I think I only read like the first 3 or something like that. But basically, from what I have gathered, Bella seems to be more of the shy, timid, oh my god type from Edward's perspective. And I mentioned this before, but this really changes perspective, right? Because reading Twilight from Bella's perspective, you definitely get the vibe that Bella is like borderline depressed. Like, she doesn't feel very much. She doesn't internalize very much. She has this desperate attachment to Edward that was very not healthy and never addressed, because she would like have these adrenaline rushes where she would only see Edward when she's like in danger, so she kept endangering her life so she could like see him and hear his voice. Oh my god. And like that was never addressed, because I was like, Bella is basically having a psychotic break and it was never discussed. Like, I don't know what that was. We're going to talk more about these plot points that were flat out dropped. Girl, Stephanie Meyer, she brought up some good plot points and then was like, fuck it, I'm never addressing it again. Bella, from Bella's perspective, she is very not interesting. We're not given that much to go off of, besides the fact of she does seem like a rather reserved person. Okay? From Edward's perspective, she seems very like quiet, shy girl. And he says this like in his own thing if you ever read it, but she's very much so like quiet, shy girl. So my guess is that was what she was intended to be, and that falls in line with the pattern that was popular back in like 2005 to like 2012. Now, since I already started getting into it, let's talk about Edward. Edward, in the Twilight series, and this goes for everyone who is Team Edward, but I think back then the way Edward was interpreted was basically like the Prince Charming. He was suave and sweet and kind and caring and oh my god, Edward, and da 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 da. Like, he was the gentle one, right? More comparative to Jacob, who in my opinion, Jacob was seen as the more passionate one. That being said, Edward is not the Prince Charming that everyone thinks he is, that Bella thinks he is. And I say this because, again, when I read the leaked chapters that I can't think of the name of, my god, the leaked chapters, Edward, when he first, remember the scene where Bella goes to school for the first, like, on her first day, and she comes in, and, like, Edward is staring at her, and the movie can't say it, but in the book, she comes in and she sees like Edward staring at her, and how he has like this horrible reaction where he's like not acknowledging her or whatever. In her head, she's like, wow, he must really like think I'm ugly or whatever. That was true. And like, I know everybody is disappointed and mad because they're like, Edward doesn't think that. He just thought she was so beautiful or whatever. No, he actually thought that Bella was uninteresting. He thought she looked bland. He thought she was ugly. Like, he really thought this. He also, like, you know the part where she stands in front of the fan and he gets a whiff of her scent? Let me tell you, he gets such a bloodlust for her scent that he contemplates not only killing her, but because he was killing her in front of the class, he contemplated how long it would take for him to kill everybody else in the classroom and escape, and then contemplating, and this was within a few seconds, contemplating how he would run out of the school and how long it would take for his siblings to notice and go after him, and how they would have to go hiding in Alaska again, because it happened before, by the way. How they would have to go into hiding in Alaska again, and how they would have to cover their tracks, and how he would feel so bad and such a disappointment because he did this again, and how he can't control his like more animalistic whatever, right? Like that was the whole thing. So the reason why Edward fell in love with Bella was because he saw Edward is this very calculating person. Even Stephenie Meyer also said Edward tends to overthink. Edward is a very intelligent person. He's very smart. He's lived a long time enough to basically know everything. Jesus Christ. But Edward is this sort of intelligent sort of character. That being said, because of how Edward is, and because he's lived so long that he knows everything in the school system, like every time they do a test or quiz, he gets straight A's because he knows everything because he's done it about 1,200 times, right? Okay. So, that being said, Edward does not like knowing things. Does not like not knowing things. Because, and it's a whole thing. I don't know if the movies establish it, but basically it's a thing that Edward can read other people's minds. That's his ability. Every vampire has like this special ability. Edward's is reading other people's minds. The thing is, he can't turn it off, so he can always hear what people are thinking, which at this point he's grown used to, but I was like, I don't know how this man hasn't gone insane at this point, but he's used to it, right? That being said, he can't read Bella's mind. He doesn't know what Bella's thinking. He doesn't know how Bella's feeling, so he has that, which forces him to interact with her like a normal person, aka which is how the romance begins. You picking up what I'm putting down? Like, I see the intention, I see where you were going with it, I see what was supposed to happen, but it didn't happen. Like, the intention was because Edward cannot read her mind, Edward is forced to interact with her as normal people do. And that's how we kind of get the romance thing started. You see, you're picking up what I'm putting down? Alright, so, that being said, Edward likes Bella, or gains an interest in Bella, because he has this whole trying to figure her out thing. Again, in line with what was popular back then. Shy girl, trying to figure her out, trying to get to know her type of thing. Right? Because that's what authors and publishers thought we wanted. Okay. So, that's what set the ball rolling. But it changes Edward's character. He's not the kind and sweet and caring person that we thought he was. He was trying to run away from Bella. He was trying to avoid her. He didn't like her. He didn't even like her until well until the second book. Really, if we're being completely honest. But that was Edward. He wasn't this kind and caring, sweet Prince Charming that we thought he would. Actually, Edward was kind of an asshole, if I'm being honest. He was kind of an ass. But that's also because Edward sees himself as a monster. Edward hates himself. And this was even in the original Twilight series, but I think a lot of people, it either slipped past them or it like didn't stick. Like, it was a character trait that a lot of people ignored, whether purposefully or not. Edward was a character that saw himself as a monster, and very much so at some point didn't see himself as good enough for Bella. That's why in New Moon, is it New Moon, the second book? New Moon, he basically ran away from Bella and ran off into God, where was he? I forgot where he was, to France or something like that. He was in somewhere in Europe, just hiding out there. His family knew where he was, but they weren't going to tell Bella. But that's where he was. And that's why he did that. I think most people know why he did that, but I just think the aspect of, hey, Edward hates himself was like not, established enough. Whew. All right. Let's talk about, let's talk about Jacob and Renesmee. And this is where I get into certain plot points that Stephenie Meyer picks up and then drops. So let's talk about some of the other plot points before we get into the Jacob Renesmee plot point. And y'all know, if you know Twilight enough, you know exactly what plot point I'm talking about. Whew. So first of all, the psychotic break in New Moon. Bella goes through this depression, essentially. And in the movie montage, it shows it like circulating around Bella's head and the seasons changing of like her friends doing stuff, but she's still just in her room by herself. Right? Let's talk about that. And a lot of stuff with it. First of all, Bella discovers shortly after that, which is what kind of broke her psychotic break, she starts hanging out with Jacob and his crew all the time. The reason is because Jacob and his crew kind of do these dangerous things. So she starts hanging out with them because they're doing like things like cliff diving, and they ride the dirt bikes or motorcycles or whatever it is, and she starts doing that with them because she's trying to see Edward talking to her in her head. It's never implied that Edward is using... Is it? I don't remember. I don't think it was ever implied that Edward was using his powers to talk to her and to like warn her like, hey, what you're doing is really stupid. So that being said, what the fuck was that? Not only do we have this plot point that Bella is terribly codependent on Edward, she literally cannot function in her day-to-day life anymore. Her social life has completely stopped because Edward is gone. She's also putting her life in danger in order to hear his voice, which was never addressed. It was, oh, she has to go halfway across the world to save Edward so he doesn't reveal that he's a vampire and get himself killed. And oh, they love each other now. But we're not going to talk about this psychotic break. What if Edward goes on vacation for like a week? What the fuck? Is she just going to break down? Like, never addressed. Never addressed. And that was honestly an interesting plot point. Not only that, but because of that, you can see, and it's established more in Breaking Dawn, but because Bella has essentially at this stage isolated herself from all of her friends, because Bella had friends. She never interacted with them. She had the other brown-haired girl with the long hair, who was her friend. The other boy that had the crush on her that she never talked to. And it was one other girl, I cannot remember her name to save my life. It was a black girl, I believe. She had those 3 friends. Never talked to them. They were at her wedding in Breaking Dawn. The thing is that even then, Bella, because she was marrying Edward, was going to fake her death. And basically cut herself off from her family and her friends. For obvious reasons, because she was a vampire now. But that being said, her isolating herself from her friends and family was never addressed. So you have this girl who's very codependent on this guy, and who is cutting off all contact with all the people in her life in order to be with him. Sounds like red flags to me, but okay, Chief. So you have that. Not only that, but then, let's get into it. The imprinting thing with Jacob and Renesmee. Woocha. So, Jacob has a crush on, I shouldn't say crush because it's supposed to be like this soulmate thing, girl. He likes Bella. He imprinted on Bella. As soon she has a child with Edward while she's still fucking human, because Edward has this whole thing where he can't turn her into a vampire so they can have the vampire kid. But she wants to have a baby with him, and she was so stuck on this fucking baby. They had the baby. Almost fucking killed her. Why Bella was stupid enough to want a baby that was going to kill her? Beyond me. Yet again. Almost died to have his child. Cut off her entire family. And has psychotic breaks when she's away from him. Codependent as fuck. Okay. All of that being said, she has this child, names it Renesmee. Renee and Esme, what the fuck ever. Anyway, Renesmee. As soon as Jacob sees Renesmee, it takes a minute for everybody else around him to like realize it, but he imprints on Renesmee, who is an infant, just born an hour ago. Okay? He imprints on her. Never addressed. And some people have speculated, I think, that I have met, that the only reason Jacob imprinted on Bella wasn't because he was actually in love with Bella, but because he was going to be in love with her unborn child, which I was like, that's creepy and disgusting. And then now it becomes this protection thing of like he wants to protect her, but then the Volturi are on the way. But Bella finds this out halfway through, like going to deal with the Volturi because and Edward was like, not Edward, Jacob was like, oh, I'm gonna protect Renesmee or whatever. Renesmee is a child that grows up way beyond, way faster than other children. Like, barely a year has passed and she was, like, already 10 years old, right? Because she's half vampire. Because of this, we need to call into question a lot of things, especially when we're putting Jacob's imprinting into the picture. Because she's now 10, does she have the mental state and the maturity of a 10-year-old? Even though she hasn't gone to school or received a formal education because she can't, because no one would be able to explain how she grows up so fast. So does this mean she still has the mental maturity of an infant? Which doesn't make sense because she can talk and walk and interpret things just as clearly as a normal 10-year-old. So what's going on? That's not explained properly. Not only that, but then it's kind of implied that like Jacob is going to like, even if, so, it's kind of implied that Jacob's not going to try to do anything, but like, so it's like, oh, Jacob's going to be whatever she needs him to be, whether it's a father figure or an uncle or whatever, and she was like calling him Uncle Jacob or some shit. But yet again, that's weird, and I'm like, I understand, like, you have this whole, like, imprinting system, which was a great plot point, by the way, with the other guy who imprinted, but the lady got married or something like that, or it wasn't meant to like when they imprint, but they don't end up with the person that they imprinted with. It's great, but now you've introduced this underage fucking child into the picture and ruined Jacob's character because now he's a fucking pedophile. What the fuck are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? But essentially, you introduce this child character and you introduce the concept of imprinting. My only guess is that you could try to make it this whole pure thing where you have someone who's looking out for Renesmee and he's this whatever family figure in her life, but I don't see why that would be necessary when she actually has a real fucking family. Like, she has Edward, she has Bella, she has her grandparents, she has all her aunts and uncles, like, she has this entire vampire family. Why the fuck would she need Jacob on top of that? Like, it really just seems like Stephenie Meyer haphazardly threw Jacob in there just to wrap up Jacob's plot point. Just so it wouldn't be like, oh, poor Jacob, he didn't get the girl. But, like, realistically, what did Stephenie Meyer do with Jacob? Who everyone, for whatever reason, saw as, like, the token Native American kid, which is, oh, child. Alright. But, essentially, what did she do with Jacob's character? Besides get Bella out of trouble and be the white knight for Bella when she needed him because he was in love with her. Completely destroyed everything about his character. And now he's like the fucking pedophile that imprinted on a child. Why did you do that to him? That was the worst thing you could have did to him. Like, what? And I'm in my fucking feelings because I like Jacob. I was team Jacob. I was praying to God that Bella would end up with Jacob. But I knew from the get-go, from page 1, that it was always going to be Edward. Because that's how things go. Whoever is introduced first is usually the character that the girl is going to go with. At least that's how it worked back when YA was on and popping for me. I don't know how it is anymore, but it's just like, really? I would have preferred if, honestly, you just left Jacob the fuck alone. Like, if Jacob went on to live his own life, figure out a life without Bella, that would have been the best thing you probably could have came up with for Jacob that I could think of, because this Renesmee crap was some bullshit. Like, what the fuck? I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I am tired. There were other plot points that I thought was gonna happen that never happened. Like, what's her name? Rosaline, Rose, the Rose girl. I can't think of her name, but the one that was with Emmett. Her story was that she wanted a child with Emmett for the longest, but it was something like she couldn't, or one of them can't have kids, or some crap like that. And so she's always had this like really, uh, what is it? Empty feeling because she wants to be a mother, but she can't. Which I was like, I don't understand why y'all can't just adopt a child, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, so when Bella gets pregnant, Rosaline, I forgot her name, starts being friends with Bella. She starts getting real chummy with Bella. And when I was reading that, I was like, well, I'm suspicious because Rosalie has basically never really liked Bella. Like, she's always, in my opinion, both in the books and in the movie, she's just been really cold to her. So I was like, well, she really doesn't like this girl. But then, when Bella's pregnant, they become the bestest of friends. And I was like, well, I could kind of understand because Bella's pregnant, so she kind of has this whole I want to protect Bella thing. What I suspected, which would have been a great plot point to keep the story going, was that Rosalie was going to steal Bella's baby and then go on the run. Right? Like, it would make sense. She never did that. Like, because, like, you could just tell, especially in the book, the moment the baby is born, the first person to grab the baby was Rosaline, whatever her name was, was the Rose girl. She was the first one to have the baby, and she was holding onto the baby for the longest. And, like, Bella has her thing, Edward has to change her, but then shortly after all that shit calms down, she goes to see, and even in the movie, she goes to see the baby, and Rosalie is holding the baby. And the way the scene was going, it almost felt like when Bella was going to ask for her baby, Rosalie was going to be like, no. But she gave her her child, and then it was like, everything is good and dandy, cool. And I was like, so was that just not a plot point that was going to be explored? Because in my opinion, Rosalie don't give two flying fadoodly fucks about Bella. She has no attachment to Bella at all. Why would she care about... The only reason why I could think she wouldn't do it is because Bella is associated to Edward, so she has to deal with Bella whether she wants to or not. But even still, it would have been a great plot point to explore with Rosalie stealing Bella's baby, or even being overly attached to Bella's baby. Never explored. Never. Like, I was like, that could have been a great plot point. I thought that's where it was going, but it didn't. I don't remember. I just remember the Breaking Dawn going on and on and on about the Volturi, which, honestly, low-key, I hated whenever the Volturi popped up, because it was just... I knew it was going to be 200 pages of just listening to the Volturi talk, and them talking to the Volturi, and not giving a flying fadoodly fuck about anything going on. Any other plot points. Honestly, I just remember Breaking Dawn also talking about a lot of characters that I really didn't care about and trying to wrap up their plot points, and like me not really caring that much. I think that's it. That's all for now, folks. Let me know how you feel about Twilight if you have revisited it or reread it, and what your thoughts about like rereading it was. Because I know a lot of people revisit books and they're like, well, my thoughts change. If you reread the book and your thoughts changed at all, let me know. That's all I have. If you would like for me to revisit any other books. I'm sorry. I paused because there's one book that I pray to God no one asks, I can't say it, me to read. But I don't think anyone will. My final verdict on everything, if I was to re-rate Twilight, I would probably give it more of a 3-star. 2 or 3 stars. Because I think it definitely has its flaws as a book in general. I think there are plot points that were dropped. I think that there are certain problematic themes that we should talk about. I think that Bella is the weakest link still. She's definitely not as bad as a character as everyone else said before, but she is still not a strong character. Like, she still has a lot of issues that I described of, like, this weird abusive, like, it's not, like, you know it wasn't meant to be an abusive character. You know definitely, like, Edward is not an abusive person, but it shows all the signs of an abusive relationship of, like, Bella cutting off from her friends and family and this codependency thing and, like, weird, very weird behavior that Bella exudes, and trying to, like, honestly, the reason why she wanted to, like, try to marry Edward so hard and have this baby is to, like, solidify their relationship, which is also problematic. So it would have to be a 3 stars for me, maybe a 2-star, just because overall the series from beginning to end has its flaws. Maybe this all is to say Twilight is just as bad as people said it was, but for other reasons. Like, I don't think it's poorly, like, people have gone on rants about, like, oh, it's poorly written and Stephenie Meyer can still write. I think she is a good writer. I think she goes on long tangents a lot, and, you know, her books are way longer than they need to fucking be half the time. Because half of the Twilight books, if I'm being honest, could be cut in fucking half. Especially with the Volturi scenes. Ooh, girl. I had to be mentally prepared to get through Volturi scenes, because it was just like 120 pages of goddamn fuck all happening. That's all, folks. Thank you for watching this video.
1, 2, 3, fuck it.